Welcome back for another episode of Brand Basics. Today we are going to be talking about a legendary French man who is the self-proclaimed king of daywear. He is known for really embodying the essence of what it means to be French and to dress in a French style. And we're talking about Jacquemus, man. Who else? So diving right in, who is Jacquemus? Is the designer actually named Jacquemus? In which the answer is yes. So the designer behind the brand is named Porte Jacquemus. He was born in 1990 and he's 30 years old. He's known from a very young age that he wanted to be successful within the fashion industry and had an inkling that he wanted to be a designer. There's a story that at the age of 9, he actually sent a letter to Jean-Paul Gaultier about being his fashion assistant, I think it was, because he knew that it would make for a great story and a great spectacle, and that Jacquemus had something to offer that no other 9-year-olds could. And this was a really telling sign of who Jacquemus is as a person, because he's always had this craving for a great story and the ability to share that story with a wide audience. So not only knowing that he wanted to be in fashion from a young age, he came from a really humble background. His family were farmers in the south of France, and he's always had an appreciation for Mother Nature and all that she's had to offer. But in 2009, he decided, okay, I'm gonna go for it. I want to become a fashion designer. So he moved to Paris to study fashion design, but unfortunately in the first semester of his schooling, his mother passed away in a tragic car accident. And it was in that moment that Jacquemus knew that life was precious and time was not guaranteed. So he decided to drop out of fashion school and immediately launch his eponymous brand, Jacquemus. Coming from humble beginnings and being a naive, first starting out designer, he had 100 euros in his pocket to start his first collection. So he was walking along the streets of Paris and popped into a curtain maker and asked her, hey, do you think you can make a skirt for me? And she said, yeah, sure, what do you want? And because he only had the 100 euros, he ended up making a very minimal skirt that was just A-line with a zip on the side. No buttons or pockets because those were additional expenses. And at this time, Jacquemus really started to discover some of these legendary fashion houses and designers like Jill Sander and Martin Margiela, and not only did he have an aspiration to be like them, an admiration for their minimal aesthetic, it was never with the intention of creating a minimal design aesthetic for Jacquemus that would emulate them. It was literally out of financial need that he could only stretch his dollars so far. And because of that, it has formed the foundation of his entire brand of being something that is out of necessity, but also is exuberant and can be over the top, but never loses sight of the absolute minimal design function of what each garment is. And not only from a young age did he enjoy fashion and storytelling, but he also really appreciated cinema. And it was because of the way that cinema unfolds with a title screen and then you have the entirety of the story, Jacquemus approaches each one of his collections in the same way. He starts with the idea of the story that he wants to tell, and from there he starts designing the items that live within the collection that tell that story and have a really strong narrative because of it. So he continued to produce these collections, and by the age of 21, he ended up in a showroom in Japan. At this time, Rei Kawakubo, the head of Comme des Garçons, happened to walk inside and see his work. And it was here that she was extremely drawn to this strong design aesthetic and narrative of what the Jacquemus brand really encompassed. That's when she fell in love with the Jacquemus brand. And it was funny because at the time, naturally, resources and capital were at a low. So Simon had been staying in Paris while his collection was at the showroom in Japan, and just got word from the showroom assistant saying, oh my gosh, Rei Kawakubo loves your designs. And he was still at a very novice stage of his education within the fashion industry and learning about these major players, so he didn't know who Rei Kawakubo was. So he went to the computer, did a quick Google search, got the rap on Rei and Adrienne Joff, who's her business partner with Comme des Garçons, and was immediately on board saying, okay, I gotta make something happen here. With time, he ended up crossing paths with Adrienne Joff and pitching to him that Simon wanted to be a sales associate at Dover Street Market, in which Adrienne was obviously shocked, saying, you're the designer, you're the artist, you're supposed to be behind the curtain, not on the floor selling the work. And he said, no, I not only need this job because I need to generate capital to fuel my business, but I want to show you that I can work the hardest. I'll be here 7 days a week. I want to prove to you my work ethic, because that is a reflection of who I am as a designer and is ultimately what's going to get me paid the most so I can continue to fuel this venture. So reluctantly, but very curiously, Adrian brought him on board to be a sales associate at Dover Street Market. Simone spent 2 years on the sales floor before Adrian decided, you know what, your collection is strong enough, I want to carry you at the Dover Street in London. And that was the turning point for Jacquemus's career as a designer. So going off of this wave of momentum that he had by being stocked at Dover Street in London, he decided to stage a fake strike outside of the Dior fashion show in Paris with a gang of his friends to cause a lot of media spectacle. And again, he loves storytelling, he loves narratives, but he also really loves and appreciates spectacle because of the amount of buzz that gets generated because of them. He says, you know, he is French and French women love a spectacle, and a strike is exactly that. He had friends of his like Clara 3000 and other women who really embodied this brutal but sensible spirit of what a young Parisian woman meant to Jacquemus and what he wanted his brand to really cater to. And it was at that time that the buzz of the media and social media really welcomed him in with warm arms. That's when his career started to reach out throughout the globe and become known on this global stage of fashion. Since then, Jacquemus has launched a menswear line and has several iconic moments on social media that you've seen. Most recently, the Spring-Summer 2020 collection, which was in Provence in France and was among a beautiful fields of lavender and a hot pink runway which the models walked down. So he started to take these pieces of historic moments in fashion, like, you know, Martin Margiela doing a show on the playground in the outskirts of Paris, to this exact moment that he wanted to recreate the story of a French woman in this lavender field. What would she wear? What would it feel like? And what was that story that he wanted to tell? He encapsulated all of this with imagery that he pushes out on social media, and again has an infinite number of amazing articles written about him because of his ability to not only create spectacle, but to do it with grace, elegance, and the spirit of what it means to be French. And because of this narrative that he has for each one of his collections, he has a title for all of them, just like in the movies. You know, maybe one collection will be La Bomba, and it shows the spirit of this feistiness, and each collection is an encapsulation of the title in and of itself. And that's something that Jacquemus does really intentionally, because he sees himself as a storyteller first and a designer second. But it's important to also realize that tertiarily, he is also a business person, and in order to continue to sustain his venture, he knows that he needs to be savvy with how he markets and operates his business as well. I'm sure he can allude this to his time spent at Dover Street and being on the floor and selling products, but he also gives a nod to the inner Yves Saint Laurent that he has within him, that he only produces 4 collections a year, each with the intention of having the individual pieces be highly sellable. This was something that, you know, he recognized as a key part of any brand. You need to be able to sell the pieces that are in them, and it doesn't make much sense to produce something that won't be able to be manufactured, bought, and worn. It's just a waste of resources, and time especially being the most important one at that. Because of this, his entire brand ethos is to create garments that are wearable, enjoyable to wear, and keep people coming back for more, because he does just embody this French spirit that was lacking when he first moved to Paris in 2009, because people seem to be really dreary and kind of ungrateful for this beautiful romantic life that the majority of the world has when they think about people who live in Paris. And that's exactly what Jacquemus has sought out to do, to create this beautiful life of what a French woman really is that anyone can adopt when wearing his clothing. As I mentioned, there are so many amazing resources and articles that Jacquemus has done, so I'm happy to send those to you directly if you send me a message. I'll link some of my favorite ones down in the comments below. But that's pretty much it in terms of a basic overview of Jacquemus and who Simone is as a person. I am so happy that you were here to join me on this journey, and I'm so excited to see you back here next time for another episode of Brand Basics. Stay well, guys, and I'll see you then.